So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today to participate in this important webinar. We'll be muting everybody's microphone during this presentation, but encourage you to ask questions through the chat feature. So today's webinar will provide an overview of the new Paycheck Protection Program to assist small business through these difficult times. The program will be led by Rebecca Gubbels and Delia Marin from the UMKC Small Business Development Center. Both Rebecca and Delia have a history of working closely with minority-owned businesses and will be offering an in-depth discussion on this new program, from how to apply, how much a small business or nonprofit can request, and how these loans can be forgiven. Rebecca Gubbels is a business and program development specialist at Missouri Small Business Development Center at UMKC, where she teaches entrepreneurial coursework, consults with business owners, and manages special projects. Rebecca's finance background includes managing a small business administration microloan program, a decade of commercial lending, and development of financial products for the small business market. Rebecca is a KC native who holds a BBA in entrepreneurship from Baylor University. Rebecca received the Associated Industries of Missouri Extension Industry Award in 2016, which recognizes individuals who demonstrate leadership in providing educational programs that support the economic viability of Missouri firms. She has also been named the 2017 Missouri State Star, the state's outstanding business counselor, for her contributions to local growth. Delia Marin is a business development consultant at Missouri Small Business Development Center at UMKC. In her role with SBDC, Delia works with established businesses, providing one-on-one coaching to address a variety of entrepreneurial and growth business management issues. Through the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, Delia also assists clients with understanding federal, state, and local government requirements applicable to contracting for services, manufacturing, construction, and other markets. She advises and assists clients with government application preparations, certifications, registrations, procurement counseling, bid preparation, and matching proposals. Delia has earned a BA in Human Development from St. Mary's University and has certifications in CVE Verification Counselor, Transformational Coaching, and Fundraising Management. I'd now like to offer the floor to Rebecca and Delia to go over the Paycheck Protection Program.
That's great. Andrew, thank you very much for welcoming Delia and myself both. As Andrew shared, we work at the Missouri Small Business Development Center. Our organization is partially small business administration funded to help people start and grow businesses. And we do that in three primary ways. The first of which is group learning, like we're doing today about the PPP program and what emergency relief options are out there. We also provide referrals to groups like the Chamber when you're the right resource, to individuals and for-profit businesses when our clients need more than what we're able to provide solely. And we also, the third big thing that we do is provide no-cost one-on-one business counsel. And that is a tax-funded service. And so wanted to let you know that those are the three primary things that we do. But I think Delia can speak to us doing that not only in English, but also in Spanish. Delia, would you like to share a little bit about how we're able to work with all types of businesses, including Spanish language?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting us to share our program. Yes, I have a variety of clients that I work with, and we do provide bilingual services. And it's not just on the SBDC side, Small Business Development Center side, but also the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, where I wear two hats, basically. So I am able to at least walk through all our programming in the native language and be able to help folks fully understand all the resources available to them and help them grow and develop their business. So anyone who needs that extra time to understand all the resources or where to go to find the bilingual services, that's where I come in.
Yeah, we are incredibly lucky to have Delia on our team. So with that, would like to jump into some description of what entrepreneurs can be doing now, and start with a brief conversation about cash flow management, and then work into the various disaster relief loan options, one of which is the Paycheck Protection Program, and then how to become well qualified, then be awarded the various funding options. So with that, I'm going to switch the screen to looking at our website at sbdc.umkc.edu. We've written an article that we update almost daily about what entrepreneurs can be doing now to support their own cash flow. I want to talk about that a little more broadly because the number one goal that we should all be working towards is having enough cash to remain solvent. Right? At a very high level, that's our goal. For a lot of businesses, that's 90 days of cash operating cycle. And for a lot of business, that's the goal, but for a lot of business, that's a pipe dream. And so what are some things that we can be doing to, without wanting to be miserly, hoard the cash that we have? And so I want to start by talking about some high-level basics on cash flow management. This is incredibly intuitive. Most everyone, we've been at this for a couple weeks now, right? Most everyone has already figured out to hold off on making large purchases and those kind of things, is making arrangements to pay your bills as slowly as possible without incurring a negative consequence. Please, as part of the CARES Act that was signed into law a week ago Friday, there is a 6-month deferment on existing Small Business Administration loans. So if you already have a loan from a lender that is Small Business Administration guaranteed, it is supposed to have both the principal and the interest on that loan covered by the SBA for the 6 months starting, I think March 27th. Any payment you have due after March 27th, I think was when that was supposed to kick in. At some point you will have to sign some paperwork about that, but the SBA should start covering your payments on March 27th for the coming 6 months. But what if you have a loan that isn't Small Business Administration guaranteed? What about your landlord? What about all the other things? Please be reaching out to anyone that you owe money to. Of course, traditional debtors, but please keep in mind suppliers, landlords, and any private debt to reach out to see about getting modified terms. Is it possible for you to make a partial payment? Will they, spot you 1 or 2 months with no payment? And keep in mind, first you ask if you can have payment forgiveness. And then when they tell you no, you seem so reasonable when you then ask for modified terms on a partial payment, right? And so keep in mind good principles of negotiating as you're reaching out. Many of us may or may not have good business insurance coverage. However, it's some things about business continuity policies are often in a larger business liability policy. You should be reaching out to your business insurance agent to make sure that if you have a business continuity policy, that you understand that you have that coverage. And you should also be investigating if you have what's called force majeure coverage, which provides coverage for a project that was interrupted. So business continuity is for if your business is interrupted, and force majeure is for if a particular insured project is interrupted. Please reach out to your business insurance agent as a part of reaching out to everybody. And when you're on the phone with them, find out what coverage you have. Now, structurally, the way that the insurance industry works is a lot of people pay in and then they try to limit the times that they pay out so that they can do well for their shareholders. That being said, you're probably going to be told initially that you can't make a claim. Please work with your small business development counselor or any other business advisor that you trust to help then figure out if it makes sense to go ahead and make a claim and to go to the legal effort to then fight to get that paid. There are some risk reward things that need to be done there to figure that out. But absolutely first step, find out if you have those kinds of coverages. Move on to inventory management. We will send the chamber this exact link. And Delia, maybe that's something you could put in the chat while we're, so that everyone can have access to this at their own leisure. There are quite a number of things that you can be doing to manage inventory. I just got a note from one of our SBDC clients late morning that they have a retail store and they are packaging up the things in their retail store to make how to make working at home more lovely kits. So including, little plants and sage that you can burn and take the spirits out of your house and whatever else they're offering. but there's a lot of different ways to move inventory. They've also, any purchases online, this particular store is offering it 25%, because inventory is your business's cash sitting on a shelf. And so in a situation where we're attempting to hoard cash, I definitely want to be thinking about ways to move the inventory you do have. Of course, there are considerations that need to be made about payroll, but then there are some things that maybe are not as intuitive about if you are someone who lets your customers pay on account. If you do the work and then bill the customer. Certainly, please be thinking about billing the instant the work is finished, and then staying in touch with customers to find out if they are going to be able to pay timely. Much like you are asking potentially for forbearance and flexibility during this time, your customers likely need it as well. So while you need them to pay, please keep in mind that your customers are the lifeblood of your business. Those are the relationships that allow you to make money into perpetuity. And so, yes, you need them to pay, but people will remember your flexibility and kindness and ways that you work to find a win-win solution during this time. And so please work towards billing faster and staying in good touch, but combining that with balancing your own cash flow and empathy for your customers. Finally, on the cash flow front, if you would give some thought to if there are ways that you can be still solving your customers' problems, but in a different way. Part of what a business is, and the definition that we use at our center, is that a business is a repeatable process of solving problems for other people, that those people view to be a big enough problem that they will change their planned use of time and money and give it to you instead. And so again, that's not what you're going to find in the business definition if you go look up what is a business. However, that is probably the handiest version, especially for tough times like we're in now. So if you're in the habit of repeatedly solving a problem for a customer, the question is there a different way that you can be solving customers' problems now? Or do you have the skills and talents now to be solving a slightly different problem? Like, for example, you've seen the folks that are beautifully, typically making alcohol for all of us to drink, and now have switched to using that same base alcohol. Instead of turning it into vodka and gin, they are now turning it into hand sanitizer to keep us all safe. That is their same resources and same skill set now deployed to solve a different type of problem. Please be thinking about new ways to solve problems, new problems you can be solving, and ways that you can change your distribution methods to continue to progress and survive in these times. So I'm going to skip through this information, but as you read this article later at your leisure, you'll see that there is some quick math, back of the napkin math, on how long the cash that you have can last you. And I suggest that people do it two ways: the cash that you would like to use, and the absolute, all the cash you could get your hands on if you had to right this second. How long could that last you? Those are both good numbers for any business owner or management team to have a hold of. As we scroll into the information about ways to potentially extend your runway, I want to point out that organizations in Kansas City like AltCap and the city of Kansas City, Missouri itself are working towards trying to find ways to serve our small business community. AltCap had a loan fund which was incredibly well received, and they are now putting people on a wait list. The information and links all in this article here are live, so you can click in and see about applying, getting on their wait list for what's next. Also some links to information happening within the city and regions linked here for those particular ways to extend your cash runway. The big question before us is about the Small Business Administration disaster financing options. There's been a lot of information come out and lots of things to discuss. And so I'm going to just, excuse me for just 1 minute while I move this screen. So the disaster response, pardon me, let me make a sentence. The disaster response started with economic injury disaster loans. Those are loans directly from the Small Business Administration for those that can evidence that they've been substantially harmed by this COVID-19 situation that we're all in. And so over time, starting last Friday with the CARES Act, the Small Business Administration has further empowered all existing Small Business Administration preferred lenders to begin offering what's called the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP loans. And those are to cover 2.5 months of payroll-related expenses for businesses dealing with COVID-19. So now what I'd like to do is share with you an internal grid that we are using here within the Small Business Development Center to try and keep track of all of these changes. There were changes on Tuesday afternoon, and there was another round of changes to the PPP program just last evening at 7 Eastern time. And so then there has been additional guidance coming since then to try and make clarifications. So I'm going to show you an internal document, which I will further share with the folks at the chamber once I have permission to share this publicly. As is, I'm just going to show it to you on my screen. All right, so we're going to look at this here. And 2 questions before I go on with this information. One, if someone could confirm that you are indeed seeing a grid that says SBA Coronavirus Pandemic Disaster Loans. And 2, if someone could figure out what's going on with the writing on the screen, as it's hard for me to read through.
Rebecca, you're still on your original.
Okay, thank you, Delia. So I'm going to do a new share. Is that better, Delia?
You're on the spreadsheet now.
Great, thank you. Ah, and the weird writing is gone. Excellent. All right, so guys, again, this says it was updated on the 31st. I've done some additional updates to it since, and we're going to talk through some of the ones that happened overnight, but this is, again, an internal for our use only that I am probably going to get my hands slapped for showing you grid of keeping track of this business. So it shows here 5 different kinds of financing options, but I am going to be incredibly frank with you, and that this, as presented, is I don't know what the physical version of misnomer is, but this is a misnomer. So let's start here with this column F, which represents the SBA Small Business Debt Relief Program. This is not a loan origination program. There's no new money coming out of this, but these are the details of what I was describing about existing Small Business Administration loans being covered in terms of principal and interest for 6 months starting on what was March 27th. And so this is not a loan program, but this is a feature of how the SBA is working to assist existing customers. Next, I'd like to talk to you about the initial SBA Express Bridge Loan product. This came out almost concurrently with the original Economic Injury Disaster Loans, all the way to the left in column B. However, this SBA Express Bridge Loan was not adopted and used by most banks, because when you think about a bridge and how a bridge works, I mean, just like in a car, right? A bridge works from 2 points of certainty, and it spans the difference, right? So you go from the left bank to the right bank over the bridge, the river is below you, and you move from one point of safety to a moment of risk to a point of safety. That's how a physical bridge works. A bridge loan works in much the same way. And in this situation, there was no firm starting point. And so for many businesses, this was like, if we think about the bank, this was asking them to do a bridge from companies in free fall to their depositors' money, right? When banks, there's only really 2 ways that commercial banks make money, and that's fees and spread. And when they make a loan, they are lending their depositors' money, and they need to lend it well enough that it comes back. Because otherwise, can you imagine if you went to the ATM, how mad you'd be if they were like, whoopsies, you know, we made some bad loans, no money for you today. It's a huge risk for our entire economy. And so this bridge loan was a great initial thought. I can see why all the people in Washington would have been excited about this and eager to put something like this together. But these bridge loans did not take off because they were not between 2 points of uncertainty with uncertainty in the middle. There is just a start point of uncertainty. So these bridge loans technically exist, but I have not heard of any bank offering or having done any of them. So then from that point, the Small Business Administration started offering economic injury disaster loans. These are loans directly from the Small Business Administration. You can go to this website right here. It's covid19relief.sba.gov. Delia, maybe that's another one you can put into the chat for us. You can go directly to that website and apply for a loan. It will ask you a minimum of questions, which actually I should be able. I'm going to tell you about it and then I'm going to show you the application process. I'll do it in that order. But we have the exact questions that you will be asked for this application process available to you. These are loans that will be calculated in amount, and this is a big difference between the PPP loans. These direct from the SBA loans are going to be calculated as 6 months of your operating expenses, as evidenced by what you were doing in 2019. So in 2019, your average operating expenses were, I don't know, we'll call it 10 grand, because that's easy math for me to do while a lot of people are watching. And so then they would award you a economic injury disaster loan of $60,000. This is not something where you request an amount. You tell them your financials and they tell you how much you may have. But it is 6 months of full operating expenses. So that leaves out cost of goods and direct labor. The amount that you may have for these is up to $2 million. And the interest rate is 3.75. I want to talk to you about this column C. This is, again, presented as a separate thing. This isn't really separate. This is a feature of the economic injury disaster loan itself. When you are going through the application process, one of the questions that it will ask you at the end is, do you want a $10,000 loan advance? You need to say yes, because assuming everything you've told the federal government about yourself when you filled out this application is accurate, true to the best of your knowledge, and not fraud, that first $10,000 that they advance you is forgivable. So it is, I don't like the word free, the banker in me doesn't, but it is a forgiven, free $10,000. And then you get that faster than the rest. And then you don't have to pay it back, assuming you have not committed fraud. So that is a feature of the economic injury disaster loan. And there is a button that you click during the application. It is quite obvious, but do not click submit on these applications until you have actively found that button and clicked it, because it's insane to let $10,000 just go. I will also share with you that if you applied for an economic injury disaster loan prior to Monday of this week, before that feature was added, you do need to go back and reapply for the $10,000, which is, thankfully, they streamlined the application process from what it first was. The website was being mobbed. And so the application process should be much more smooth, but you do need to go back and ask for this feature and apply a second time if you applied before Monday of this week. And so with all of that background, I'm finally ready to start talking to you about the features of the PPP loan.
Rebecca?
Mm-hmm.
Just quick questions before we go into PPP after all the stuff you just covered.
Sure.
First question we had come in, is this information you just provided applicable to nonprofits as well as small businesses?
Yes, with some caveats. The nonprofit rate on the economic injury disaster loan is a full percentage point less. And on economic injury disaster loans, the nonprofit must be non-religious. On the PPP loan, religious endeavors and churches are purported, I have not seen the final rules, to be eligible for PPP loans.
Perfect. And then this document that you're showing everyone right now, as of now, is an internal document, not shareable, but we may get it shareable later.
I'm clearly showing it to you anyway. I'm probably going to get fired, which if that happens, I guess I'll take advantage of the new unemployment benefits. But yeah, it's just easier for me to talk through the thing I use every day. And as soon as this is available for the public, I will send this to you at the chamber for you to then distribute to your members.
Will do. And then did you cover, just quick question, the anticipated time for a loan application review for the EIDLs?
I did not. And I was thinking I would, once I gave a background on PPP, that we would do that, but here I can,
Okay.
I'm getting a little crazy. Let's see what I got. They are saying that the turnaround time, and here I think I can highlight that whole row, that the and I'm going to hide this column C, guys, because this is not really a thing, right? It's just a feature of the last, so that way we can really see idle loans next to PPP loans. These are the purported turnaround times. They're saying 3 to 6 weeks on idle loans, and they were saying 2 weeks on PPP loans. Keep in mind, guys, this is the federal government having fallen off a cliff, and all of the people who are also dealing with their own issues with coronavirus and this kind of thing, changing the entire mechanism of how the Small Business Administration functions as we fall and then learn to fly together. And so, yes, these are the service level commitments for turnaround times. And I am advising clients to look at these and mentally give them double this time, and being then pleasantly surprised if they're able to get funds faster.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, I just start. Oh,
What were the interest rates again for idle? Was it 3.74% for small businesses and 2.75% for 501c3s?
correct. Correct. And again, the Small Business Administration has never lent money to nonprofits before. That has been a huge no-no. In fact, at this Small Business Development Center, we're not typically allowed to even work with nonprofit companies, even though they are businesses. But if you don't pay taxes that pay for us, then we're asked to work with for-profit companies that contribute to the tax base, right? So that the SBA is including financing for nonprofit agencies as a part of this is such a departure and an expression of just how deeply they want to be of service to all of us.
Perfect. And then are LLCs eligible for these programs?
Yes. Yes, there is a confusing question in some of the application stuff that has gotten squirrely for some. They ask, is your company owned by any other entity? Which means, do you have a parent company? Are you owned by a holding company? That kind of thing. But LLC, a person who owns an LLC can find that confusing. But the answer to that, if you're just an LLC, is no, I'm not owned by another entity.
And then we're going to do last one before we jump into the meat of this with the PPP. Can you repay idle earlier than 30 years?
Absolutely. None of these options, and I'm going to hide the other not super relevant options. None of these options have application fees, and none of them have prepayment penalties. So you can pay them back as early as you are able, and trust me, the feds would prefer you do that. All right, so at a high level, PPP is through the bank path. So you go to an SBA preferred lender. Ideally, it would be your current bank. Everyone should be starting by reaching out to where they bank currently. And self-employed people, independent contractors, sole proprietors, and businesses, including tribal businesses and 501c3s with under 500 employees, will be eligible for this. Banks are accepting applications for this for businesses this week, and for self-employed people, Meaning sole proprietors, I think, not, you know, you work in your business and so do 15 other people, right? Not like that. And independent contractors, like people that get paid on 1099s, they will start accepting applications from those folks on Friday of next week. But basically anyone with 500 or fewer employees will qualify for this. Knowing about the chamber's membership and just what size and scope some of your participants and members have, I will tell you that there is some guidance that lets you, if you are a franchise with more than one location in food service and those kind of things, that lets you temporarily, not in usual SBA lending terms, but temporarily have consideration per location rather than for total company. And so those are things that, especially for those of us that have maybe, you know, 30 Culvers, what do you do about these size limits and caps and that kind of a thing? And so do know that there are some, especially food service based franchise extensions to this employee limit. So that's who's eligible. Then again, EIDL is a direct loan from the Small Business Administration, and PPP loans are from SBA lenders. I will tell you guys that structurally, part of what's happening, because remember we talked about how the two ways that commercial banks make money, it's fees and spread. A lot of the way that smaller banks in particular make money on Small Business Administration loans is by selling them in the secondary market. So they originate them and they service them, but they sell, so they keep the fees, but they sell the spread, right? Is basically what happens. And with an interest rate of only 1%, that changed from yesterday to today. It was supposed to be 0.5% yesterday. It is increased to 1% today. There aren't people on the secondary market wanting to buy these loans because there's not enough spread to interest them. And so that's keeping a lot of the mid-size and smaller banks from finding this to be a profitable thing for them to do. Because remember, they're in charge of doing responsible things with all of their depositors' funds. And so that's part of the reason why you're starting to hear that these lenders are working first and foremost with their own existing customers, right? So they want to be able to offer this, but for people that they already know and trust. And so you should absolutely start by reaching out to your current lender. And then if you need other referrals, please feel free to reach out to either the chamber or especially us at the Small Business Development Center. But there are reasons why this structurally isn't a great deal for banks who have to take on all the costs of servicing these loans, right? So there has to be a human to process these. There has to be a human to cut the check. There has to be a human to do all the documentation that goes with this. And then there are humans to make sure that they dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and then that they manage their existing ability to do business with the Small Business Administration by having done it right. And so there's a lot for banks in figuring this out. So that's why I wanted to at least share with you that many banks are starting this process, but starting with their existing customers only. To a question we had in the chat, I want to now contrast the term of these loans. Again, we talked about the amount for EIDL being 6 months of operating expenses, and that includes non-production labor as well as rent and utilities and business insurance and all that stuff. The amount for PPP loans, again, is 250% of your average monthly payroll, right? So EIDL is going to be a much better deal for manufacturers with heavy overhead costs than PPP. The amounts, but then the terms. If you're having to take out a big loan, like for many of us in our personal lives, the biggest loan that we'll ever take out is our house. So if you had to pay off a house, would you rather pay it off in 30 years or 2 years? And that's a question, you know, each of us is going to need to figure out as we think through what's the best path for us. So again, there are then caps on the amount, 2 million for EIDL, 2.5 times average monthly payroll, up to 10 million here, which, and again, there are expansions for those who have multi-location franchise type businesses. the payroll is capped at 100,000 per employee. So when you're doing your payroll listing, please list all of your employees, all of their standard wages, all of their retirement benefits, all of their health benefits, list it all out. And if someone gets to the 100,000 mark as you are doing that math, stop them there for your averaging, but then do it for all of your employees. And if you get to the 100 mark, stop and just move on to the next employee as part of the way that you calculate that. Interest rate is favorable for the borrower at 1% on PPP. But both of these are ridiculously low rates. You can't, I mean, I could probably go buy a 5-year CD somewhere for 3.75 right now. And so that's bonkers. On securing these loans, there is a partial collateral required on the EIDL loan. They will not be looking to take home equity though, because you want to think structurally from a macroeconomic level. They don't want to take what is presently small business and employment risk and then take everybody's home equity to secure these loans and then turn it into deep housing risk. So the way that Small Business Administration financing typically works is they look to take all business assets for collateral, and then they look to take all your available personal assets for collateral. And if there's a shortfall, then they'll add the SBA guarantee. In this instance, on the EIDL loan, they're going from all business assets and then into the SBA guarantee without getting involved in personal assets. They are going to check to see if you're creditworthy. If you have a history of borrowing money and never paying it back, that's going to be a problem in either of these setups. On the PPP side, these loans are uncollateralized and they are not personally guaranteed. And I am told that the EIDL loan will not be personally guaranteed either. You know, that's a bit of a question mark in my mind. The payments, there is no payment on the EIDL loan for 1 year. There is no payment on the PPP loan for 6 months. We talked a little bit about the turnaround times, and then there is why PPP loans might be attractive is the contrast in forgiveness. Now remember, this here on the EIDL side says there's no forgiveness for an EIDL loan. Well, that's because they tell you about the first 10,000 advance. That is a grant as long as you don't commit fraud, in another column that I've hidden. So there is first $10,000 if you don't commit fraud. That's your money. That is forgiven. But on the PPP side, the amount that you spend for the 8 weeks after being funded, if that is the same as your average payroll spend, and you spend it, you bring your people back and they're back consistently for 8 weeks after funding, then that portion will be forgiven. And for some of these loans, that may be 100% forgiveness. So then if you're not able to bring people back fast enough, there is some question about whether or not you pay them and have to prove that they were working. Then there will be some sort of proration on how much it is that you are forgiven. I imagine if you bring 3/4 of the workforce back at 8 weeks consistently at their former employment levels, you probably get 3/4 of your loan forgiven. So I would imagine it will be reasonable and thoughtful, but there is a provision that no more than 20, say you can't bring everybody back as fast as you want and this kind of thing, there is a provision to add up to 25% of your loan that is intended to be forgiven for payroll. But if you can't spend it all on payroll, up to 25% of what you're awarded can be forgiven for things like paying mortgage interest, rent, and utilities during this time. So it's intended exclusively for payroll. But if that can't shake out due to timing or people getting other jobs or whatever it is, then there is a component for an additional 25% of that is always intended for payroll to be covered in another way. And again, there are no origination fees and there are no prepayment penalties for either of these. You can apply for EIDL through December 31st. You can apply for the PPP loan through June 30th. And again, guys, the amount that you get on the EIDL loan and the direct through SBA path is 6 months of operating expenses. So that's your sales less your cost of goods. That gets you to your gross margin. Well, if expressed as a percent, it's a margin. Gross profit. That gross profit minus your operating expenses, right? So that operating expense chunk, they are not going to fund your profits, but they will fund 6 months of that operating expense overhead chunk, whereas PPP will fund salaries and insurance, bennies, that kind of thing, medical leave, that kind of stuff, but that's all that's covering. So it's not covering your rent, even though you can forgive part of it if you have to use it for rent after you get it, but this will not cover your rent, right? So there's some, what do I need most things to consider as you select a path. None of this can be used to pay off existing debt. That's a question I get all the time. Oh my gosh, Rebecca, I just bought a delivery truck in December and I had to finance that thing at 10%. And so I'll just get one of these loans and refinance that delivery truck. I totally see why you would want to refinance that at 3.75%. I feel you, except no, that is not what this is for. If you go down both paths at the same time, you have to prove that you do not use the funds for the same thing. So if you get an EIDL loan, then you need to park that money in a separate account than where you park your potential PPP money. And every ounce you spend on payroll should come out of your PPP money. And because they're going to come back to you and make you prove what you spent it on. And you're also going to have to prove that you didn't tell, oh, EIDL, look at this 8 weeks of payroll I paid. Oh, bank, look at this 8 weeks of payroll. That should be 16 weeks, not the same 8 weeks counted twice, guys. So there's some stuff there to pay some attention to. And that's the bulk of that information. So I am going to switch now. As I switch to looking at some things to prepare you for application, I imagine there are questions that have come through in the chat. And so why don't we ask some of those, and I will transfer to some of the other information about preparing to apply and then do well in the underwriting process.
Yeah, okay. First question we have here regarding specifics that you just talked about. We have a new employee, non-employed before February 15th. Will their payroll be forgivable as well?
February 15th of 2019, February 15th of 2020.
2020.
Probably not. I can't say for sure. Absolutely include it in that employee list that I was talking about, right? And see if the bank will spot it to you, but I think the guidance says no. But if you don't ask, please understand, guys, that the answer is automatically no to questions you do not ask.
If it was 2019, would they be covered?
Yes.
Okay. Can you accept the $10,000 advance without accepting the rest of EIDL? If you apply for it?
I don't know the answer to that. The answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
I have heard that kind of guidance. However, you know, we each have to give some thought to where our own personal ethics leave us, as each of these funds that we take are not then available for someone else. And so one of us needs to be guided by what is best for ourselves and our own personal comfort. But I believe that that is technically allowed as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are phone expenses considered utility expenses?
Did you say phone, like ring ring?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I don't hear very well.
Okay.
Apparently I need to turn my phone up. I would absolutely consider both phone and internet a utility.
Okay, thank you. Once you obtain a PPP loan and you have hired everyone back and you make a profit from their work, are their salaries paid from the PPP loan still forgiven?
Yeah, if you bring them back for 8 consecutive weeks at their former funding level, right? So you can't give everybody a 25% haircut. But if you bring them back at their former level for 8 consecutive weeks after funding, that should be forgiven. There is some open question as to whether or not those people need to be working during that time. There's a difference between paying somebody and paying somebody to work. And there is an open question about what work requirements may or may not be a piece of that. And I just don't have more information about that at this time.
And then We have a couple more here before we get restarted. Just in clarification of the 501c3 portion, if you are a religious organization and also a 501c3, were the rules that you could not apply for EIDL, but you could apply for PPP?
Churches can do PPP, non-religious 501c3s can do EIDL. And I think there was an exception on EIDL for religious-based social service. Like, for example, I'm familiar with Kansas City's Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities is clearly a Catholic organization. It's in the name. However, the purpose is to feed homeless people, settle refugees, that kind of a thing. And so my understanding of EIDL is that there is an exception if the purpose is social service, as opposed to evangelizing about that particular faith in some way.
Okay, we have two more for this part, and then I got just two more at the end so far, at the end of the presentation. First one, is there any expectation to keep the employee on after the 8-week period ends if you take the loans?
I think that's back into, I have not seen any guidance for that, and everybody's going to have to make a decision about what's best for themselves and also their teammates and the kind of culture that they're operating in. But I've not seen any requirement past that 8 weeks.
And then last one before we get restarted here, and then the rest I'll save for the end. We have a new business less than 12 months, and 2019 business tax has not yet been filed. We believe that we would use January through March payroll for planning how much for PPP. What if we increased wages right before the business closed doors due to COVID-19? Can we use that pay rate for the PPP, or will we be stuck using the previous pay rate for January through March?
If you were not in business on February 15th of 2019, you are being asked to use your average payroll for January 2020 combined with February 2020. It does not extend into March.
Perfect. I got a couple more, but we can save them for the end, and then we'll make sure we get everyone else's questions asked.
Great. So then we went from this first paragraph here kind of into a deep dive comparison between the two primary options that are available through the Small Business Administration as a part of this COVID response. The next step is to apply. However, please understand that applying is the beginning of the underwriting process, and it is not the end. So want to talk now about minimum application requirements. They can be found here. We have a document that should come up here. Can someone confirm that you're seeing this disaster assistance loan page?
Yes.
Yes, it's taking you to the application page.
Oh, well, that should have been taking me to a separate document. Let's see. We updated this just today, and so I may need to make some adjustments. Let me go back for a second. Yeah, somewhere. Oh, wait, I have this. This is my computer. I have this. I don't know. I think we may have a broken link, which I will fix when we get done talking here. But let's see. I was working on this in the middle of the night. So let me scroll down in my sent items real quick. And I will just find the document I was hoping to tell you about. And I'm going to do a new share so that you can be seeing this as well. All right. And so if you guys, I'm assuming, unless I hear differently, that you're seeing this page that says new SBA EIDL website.
Not switched yet.
Not switched yet?
Mm-mm.
Thank you, Delia. Is that better?
Yeah, got it.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. So then this is a Word document that describes the information that you're going to need to apply. And you're going to have to confirm these items that you're not more than 500 people. You're not engaged in adult industry things, that's all in this document, which I can also send to the chamber to distribute to people who are with us today. But it'll be linked from that first website as well, just as soon as I get this fixed when we're off the phone. The information I want to put to you, though, is this business information. This information here is the information you must have in order to proceed with an application. The red asterisks are required. You can see where it's asking you about your revenues here, then your cost of goods sold, and then about operating expenses. It's going to calculate that information for you. It's actually pretty simple, right? What's your address? What's your business fax? That's cute. Date you were established, that is the minimum information to apply. So I'm gonna go now back into the website that we were talking from. And show you now the application for the PPP program. I'm assuming you guys can see this. I'm scrolling down. Oh, and it says I'm gonna have to download it. Okay, guys, this is super easy. Hopefully you can still see this. Right, you say what kind of business you are, if you have a DBA, right, what are you using this loan for, right? So you can you're only supposed to use it for payroll. Who owns this thing, right? So this is all linked from the website. We have a brief amount of remaining time and I want to get to more questions. So I am going to go back to our article and want to make sure that the screen is showing you our article again, because I want to talk about payroll information, 3 years of business tax returns, these 4506Ts. All of this information in this article now is what you should have put together in order to make it through the underwriting process. There's a difference between what you have to apply and what it takes to be underwritten. So the trick is when a person finally gets your application and reaches out to ask you questions, you don't want to be like, oh, I don't know, let me get that together. No. The trick is to put that information together now in anticipation of those questions. And there's a ton of this information on this article. Please put it together as listed here. But I want to point out a couple of things. One, business narrative. Who are you? Why you are doing well? What you're going to use the money for and how you plan to pay this back. That's huge. You're going to need your payroll information here, including your 941 forms and 1099s, capping out people with 100 grand, full list of everybody on the payroll when this started. Scroll down, there should be some personal information you should gather as well. Including 4506T forms will be asked of you. Guys, in the history of Small Business Administration disaster financing, which prior to now has typically been for like fires or tornadoes or floods or something, and this is all the entire country at the same time and no physical damage. In the past, the biggest issue to getting these loans funded, and this is true of all of this documentation should be prepared whether you're going EIDL or PPP. The biggest issue in getting these funded has been getting these 4506T forms filled out properly. So please make sure that you fill out this form, which is for the purpose of verifying your tax information, right? It's a fraud check, right? You have to fill these out exactly because you want the database at the Small Business Administration to be able to effectively talk to the database at the IRS. If your information is capitalized on your tax return, capitalize it. If it's punctuated on your tax return, punctuate it. If it's misspelled on your tax return, misspell it, right? Because this is a holdup on funding. This article concludes with then just some reminder that once you know what you're doing and you have a path, it's possible to then feel like you have some control, right? So much of this is outside of our control, but it's important to remember that we will all get through this together. And we here at the Small Business Development Center at UMKC and your friends and partner at the Greater Kansas City Chamber are here to help you do that. And so with that, let's take some additional questions.
Perfect. I have 2 questions referring back to unemployment, and then we'll spend the rest of the time doing some PPP questions, if that's okay.
Of course.
So we have a first question being an essential business that is still open. They have an employee that is over 65 years old and in the high risk category. That employee has chosen not to come back to work until the crisis is over. The employee has not been paid off, but can they draw unemployment?
I am not an expert on the labor side of all of the things that are in the CARES Act. So I have a counterpart named Ryan Como, who I think is more qualified to answer that question than myself. And so if we could get the contact information for that questioner, I'd be happy to see if we couldn't get Ryan to work towards providing an answer.
Sounds good. I will scroll back up and get that person's info. The next question is in relation to it. If an employee is not working because of the virus concerns, should they apply for FMLA? If they have the virus, should you refer to short-term disability? And that could also be
short-term disability versus FMLA?
Yeah.
I know there are FMLA expansions and considerations inside of the CARES Act from a week ago Friday. But again, I regret that I'm the financing gal. I am not an expert on the labor side of this. And so again, that's another one that we would happy to get the questioner's information and get back to. Please keep in mind that whoever it is that is helping your company with payroll right now, whether it's an accountant, a bookkeeper, or some organization like Paychecks or that kind of a thing, those people are who I would reach out to first for this information. We will also see what we can do to get you some background and that kind of thing. So we do have resources, but I want to make sure that we all remember that our current HR professionals that we work with are the best places for those questions.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll connect those questioners with the correct resources then.
That's great. It's 3 o'clock now, and I just want to point out that I am available to continue asking questions, but if anyone has to hop off, I just want to say thanks for spending some time. I will stay and ask and participate in questions for at least another 10 minutes, but for those that may have to leave and hop onto a next call, because we're all living webinar to webinar, for myself at the Small Business Development Center, Delia, my delightful counterpart, and the Kansas City Chamber, I want to say thanks to those who have to hop off.
Thank you. We should be able to get through these questions. In the PPP CARES Act calculator, can the calculations be done on an annual basis, or do you have to do a month-to-month calculation?
You can do annual and then just divide by 12.
Perfect. For PPP, can we include health insurance for one of members' LLCs?
Health insurance, yes, but the members LLC, like I lost the thread at the end there.
That's just where the question ended. I apologize.
Okay, so so I'm perceiving that maybe this is a single member LLC, and if that's the case, and it's the case even if it's not, even if you have employees, but if you pay the owner, you have to be able to show how you paid them. You're going to have the records of that, right? And so of course that's easy if you pay yourself on a W-2, but for owners draws and those kind of things, or disbursements at the end of the year that show up on your K-1, you're going to need to have those records available. Yes, you can include both retirement benefits and health benefits for all employees, including yourself, if you can document it. If it's ad hoc and you just pull a little money out of petty cash, that's not going to work out so hot.
Thank you. If our LLC is owned by 2 S Corps, do we apply for the EIDL via the LLC or via the individual S Corps?
Are each LLC applying is my next question. And what is the ownership structure of the S Corps? So in this article, there is some information. Where did I put this? Note on multiple businesses. Hopefully you're seeing this highlighted in blue right now. You will be asked to disclose any business affiliates. Affiliates defined by the SBA includes parent companies, subsidiaries, holding companies. Like it's real common to have one LLC own real estate and then your operating LLC pay it rent. so that you can lower your taxable income. Great, but you have to disclose your holding company and any businesses with common ownership or management. So we're recommending that the individual human who's applying put together a chart that shows all of the businesses that you own, how many companies each business has, what each company has for revenue, and then the percentage that you as an individual own of each. I would similarly advise that you create as part of your narrative the construct of which companies own what thing. And if it's a hub and spoke of whatever, please make sure that you have a picture of that and a diagram for whomever your underwriter turns out to be readily available.
All right, next question. Do the employees you pay with PPP loan have to be hired back from a layoff, or can those employees currently be getting paid?
I think they can currently be getting paid because the whole goal is to keep you from having to lay them off. But one of the things that you're going to want to talk about, because let's say you're sitting on $1 million and your monthly payroll is 10 grand, right? So you're going to have a hard time, you know, getting a loan for what is effectively $25,000 while you're sitting on $1 million, right? So there is a component of, if you're Scrooge McDuck, no, we're not giving you a loan, but everyone is working to serve as many as possible, and they are being incredibly gracious and thinking about other commitments that people might have in their business and plans for that cash. But yeah, the plan is to keep people to work, and I don't have a firm answer, but again, Scrooge McDuck might want to think about deploying his own cash.
All right, we just have three left questions. Do contract workers from an employment agency count as employees?
If people are paid on a 1099 structure, they qualify for participating in PPP loans on their own. The PPP loans will be accepted by banks from independent contractors, which is anyone who accepts payment via 1099. Banks should be beginning to accept those loans starting a week from today. As such, people who are paid on 1099 structure are not considered employees per PPP current guidance.
There we go. In calculating payroll costs, are we to deduct federal/state withholding from gross pay amounts?
I know you have to leave out FICA, and the rest of those taxes, I don't know. So I would separate them out, right? So I do a line item for wages, a line item for retirement benefits, a line item for health benefits, and a line item for taxes that aren't FICA.
Thank you. And then I actually have two left, and then we're cutting it off.
Okay.
To calculate average monthly payroll costs for an employee who earns over $100,000, do you cap the salary and then add the benefit cost, or is it the $100,000 cap inclusive of benefits?
I think the cap includes the benefits. The goal is, look, man, you make, I think, what is it? I think that average household income in Missouri is something like $47,000. And so your one employee makes a pretty close to double the annual household income of your state. It's not determined that way, but that just happens to be how we are. You know what? At 100, you've had enough, is the point. And so I believe they will cut off all contribution to any person once they hit the 100 cap. So let's say you make 82 grand and that employee has then a $20,000 value of health insurance and retirement benefits. Instead of putting that person at 102, I would show that salary of 82. I would add in the other benefits and then cap those other benefits right at 100.
All right, and then last question. Will nonprofits be required to include personal tax returns? If so, should that be the executive director or the board chair?
I think since these are not being personally guaranteed, but collateralized on the EIDL side and not collateralized and not personally guaranteed on the PPP side, That's how they've gotten the workaround for nonprofit agencies. If you are in a nonprofit organization, you need to figure this out. You absolutely need to start having this conversation with your staff and board now. And so that's a decision for you and your board to make. Should this be required? Who is it and why?
Perfect. We did it. We answered all the questions.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Hey, I want to throw in a reminder that I know I've had some folks come up to me about the application, the PPP application. It has changed. So make sure that you're looking at the most up-to-date information on that website. Download that. I think what was it, Monday, Rebecca, that we woke up after Friday and there were applications. So make sure that you're checking that you do have the most up-to-date application.
Yeah, Delia, that's a really great point. Thank you. And these application materials, as they're coming from the federal government, are available in both English and Spanish.
Right.
All right. So thank you very much. And I want to thank Rebecca and Delia for their time today. And thank you everyone for all those in attendance. I'd also encourage everyone to continue to check the KC Chamber calendar for upcoming webinars. This coming Monday, April 6th at 10 a.m., we'll be hosting a session on the CARES Act for small business relief with federal staff experts from U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, who sits on the Senate Committee for Small Business and Entrepreneurism. That webinar will cover the basics of the small business relief available through the Federal CARES Act and take your questions on who's eligible, how to apply, how to best use some of the payroll equations and more. And the Chamber's always looking for helpful content for our members in the community. So if there's anything that you may want to learn more about, you can suggest it in the chat or just email Courtney Lewis at the Chamber at clewis, Lewis, @kcchamber.com. Thank you all for your time. Have a great weekend and be safe.
Thank you. Nice to see you guys all today. Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.